From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Putting a pesky pest under the microscope.
In severe root knot infestations, we can get up to 50% yield loss.
How this research could help save crop yields in the South. Could the Black Sea grain deal be revived?
The idea that Putin would play roulette with the hungriest people in the world at the time of the greatest food crisis in our lifetimes is just deeply disturbing.
The latest on what we're hearing as a large chunk of the country bakes under triple-digit temperatures. The nation's corn crop enters a key growing stage. That's right now on AgDay.
AgDay, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when the testing grounds meet the proving grounds. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Happening right now, temperatures across the U.S. continue to soar, bringing dangerous conditions from Florida to California. As you can see from this map, the National Weather Service predicting that high heat will stay in place for the next several days, with temperatures in California, Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas still in triple digits. In Phoenix, Arizona today, people are preparing to endure a possible 20th consecutive day at 110 degrees or higher. Now, they broke the record for the longest streak yesterday. El Paso, Texas reached 100 degrees for the 32nd straight day on Monday, with the National Weather Service tweeting, "There's no end in sight." The state's electrical grid is feeling the strain from record demand, but officials say it is holding up thanks to additional resources.
So we're seeing energy storage and solar power really playing a much more dramatic role than they were playing even just a couple of short years ago.
And you would think nighttime temperatures would offer up some relief, but no. Phoenix's low of 95 on Monday was its highest overnight low ever, toppling the previous record of 93 set back in 2009. Farmers keeping a close eye on these higher temperatures right now because much of the nation's corn crop has entered the critical silking stage where it's most vulnerable to high heat. Right now, 47% of the corn crop is in the silking stage. That's a 25% increase from last week when just 22% was silking.
And if you look at the heart of the Midwest, we saw at least 1/4 of the corn crop entering and moving through the silking stage in 7 Midwestern states. That includes Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Minnesota, Missouri, Nebraska, and South Dakota, leading the way in the last week with a huge increase from 27 to 70% silking was Illinois.
In Texas, one of the states battling that high heat this week, 78% of the crop is in the silking stage. So when will this high heat end, and when could the nation's heartland see more much needed rains? Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht is keeping a watch on all of it.
Yeah, I want to start off taking a look at the flooding potential because I think it really outlines the major pattern that we're following this week. And as we talked about yesterday, the way the jet stream is setting up, we're not going to move away from this pattern for days, maybe even 7 to 10 days before things start to shift back around. So we're going to be kind of stuck in an area where the location's in between a shallow trough and a very strong, deep ridge. Between those two is where we see the greatest potential, not only for rain, but also some flooding rain as well. So as you go into Thursday, you can see that green line doesn't change all that much. Kind of goes right through parts of Missouri, Tennessee, and then back up here to the north, but also comes back out here to the west and to the northwest. As we go into our Friday, that green line stays right there, shifting a little bit more to the south. And that's a 5 to 15% chance of some flooding potential. Any higher, and you're looking at the possibility of, better chances of some flooding. We'll talk more about where the temperatures are going underneath that ridge coming up in a little bit. And how cute is this? Okay, take a look at your screen. Now Liz is showing her little one helping out with feeding the cows in Nebraska. Liz says she doesn't know much about parenting, but raising her like this is pretty fun. I love that little laugh and smile at the end. We'll talk more about your forecast coming up in just a few.
In some parts of the country, it's a 1-2 punch of heat and unhealthy air quality, with millions of Americans still feeling the effects of Canadian wildfires. Now, the fires creating a haze like this one over the skies of Cambridge, Massachusetts. Paula Newton traveled to Canada, where the country is experiencing its worst fire season on record.
They've come all the way from America's Southwest.
Well, welcome to Quebec.
Now here in northern Quebec's scorched lands, joining hundreds of other American and international firefighters, doing what they can to slow wildfires that just won't quit.
At this point, we're just trying to secure the edge and make sure that the communities are safe.
The Silver State Hotshot crew is looking for hotspots. They are firefighting crews specially trained and skilled, now taking on Canada's record-breaking wildfires.
I know you're from Montana, big sky country, but this was a big fire. This is a big territory.
In the scope for us in the States, this would be one of the largest fires ever to occur in the United States. So yeah, it's a giga fire.
The total area burned in Canada already has shattered records. Now 10 million hectares, that's almost 25 million acres, an area nearly as large as the state of Ohio, and still burning.
And when they burn like this, there's no way to even put people in front of it to even stop the fire. There's no amount of resources on the ground or from the sky that's going to be able to stop one of these fires when they get the momentum.
As shocking and frankly unsettling as it is, this fire is just far too large to extinguish. In fact, the area already burned is larger than most countries on the planet. It means that not only does the fire burn, but there is going to be a lot of smoke.
And that means many American cities could be shrouded in smoke on any given day for weeks or months to come.
Don't be surprised if it continues. And secondly, this is a problem that is going to go on into the future. When it's the year to burn and the conditions are right, it's just going to continue to burn.
The rain helps. It has finally arrived in some places, but in the words of one Canadian official, it's like a drop in an otherwise empty bucket. The mayor of this town, Chibougamau, says the rain is an answered prayer. She may not have to evacuate her town again, but they have to adapt, she says. No one imagined so much would burn so quickly.
Were you scared?
Strangely, I wasn't scared. I was mad. And then I have to come down and say, Manon, you have a job to do. And that's why, I say, I stay calm. And I said to my people, let's be patient, let's do it, and keep it zen.
It may be difficult to stay calm as Mother Nature rages. The cliche applies here in every way possible. Canada is burning, and it's not out of the woods yet.
Paula Newton reporting. The United Nations and Ukraine's Western allies are slamming Russia for stopping the Black Sea Grain Initiative, saying it puts many lives in danger. USAID announcing it's giving Ukraine a further $250 million to support its agricultural sector. The agency's chief, Samantha Power, visiting Odessa this week.
The whole world needs to raise its voice, particularly the Global South, countries in the Global South, to say that it's unacceptable to hold hostage the hungriest people in the world because of some power play and aggression carried out by Moscow. The idea that Putin would play roulette with the hungriest people in the world at the time of the greatest food crisis in our lifetimes is just deeply disturbing.
Russia has said it could return to the grain deal, but only if its demands are met that would ease rules for its own exports of food and fertilizer. Turkey's president says he thinks Moscow can be convinced to return. Meanwhile, Ukraine says its infrastructure at the Black Sea port of Odessa, which is a significant hub for Ukrainian ag exports under the Black Sea grain deal, was damaged due to missile and drone strikes from Russia. Ukrainian authorities reportedly shot down 6 missiles and 31 out of 36 drones involved in these strikes. USDA officially swearing in its second in charge this week. Ag Secretary Tom Vilsack swearing in newly confirmed Undersecretary Xochitl Torres-Small to the office on Monday. The New Mexico native getting strong bipartisan support for the role. During the event, Torres-Small saying she's looking forward to continuing to to support the USDA workforce and the service they provide to communities across the country. She has served as the department's Undersecretary for Rural Development since 2021 and will replace Jewel Bronow. Bronow stepped down from the job earlier this year. Grains bounced higher on Tuesday. Michelle Rook joins us next for Markets Now. And later, getting those crops to harvest with big yields often means fighting against pests. We'll see how researchers in Louisiana are battling nematodes in the country.
AgDay is brought to you by Endzone from Farm Shop MFG, which allows you to rehydrate your soybeans from 10 to 13% on a 20,000 bushel bin. That's an extra semi-load added to your bottom line. Order your Endzone fan control now for as low as $3,300 while supplies last.
The once hot-selling F-150 Lightning, the electric pickup from Ford, is facing new headwinds. The company is slashing prices by nearly 17% due to swelling inventories and softening demand. The near $10,000 price cut brings the base model down to roughly $50,000. Now, Ford says it's able to drop the price because materials are costing less and factories are getting more productive. Now, it's happening at the same time there's been a softening of the EV market, and Tesla is starting to roll out its own Cybertruck. Corn, soybeans, wheat, all pushing higher on Tuesday amid rising tensions in Ukraine after Russia suspended the Black Sea grain deal. AgDay's Michelle Rook is here with a deeper dive in Markets Now.
Grains mostly higher on Tuesday with a mixed day in the livestock futures. Brad Koima with Koima Varlick is joining us. And Brad, let's talk about the grains first. Corn and soybeans looked like we were putting weather premium back in those markets.
Absolutely. I think that was the story of the day, Michelle, maybe with a little help from the Russia story. But it's certainly a situation here where not this week, but next week's weather looks to be maybe not inflammatorily hot, but certainly a warmer, drier. And I think the trade responded to today that some of those areas that have been living hand to mouth, right, without any subsoil moisture, are probably going to put themselves in a pretty stressy situation again. And pollination time probably hitting at a poor time for some of those people too. So I sure think that hotter forecast for next week had an awful lot to do with why we cranked it up here today.
So let's talk about technicals because we're up into some key resistance areas in corn. If we get through those, will the funds cover their shorts?
That's a great question. I was working on that today as well. We closed right into an area where there's about 3 different reasons to expect some trouble here, or resistance here, I should say. Right at the 38%, at the 40-day, at that old level of 537.5. If you pull out a chart, you'll see how important that's been to the algos lately. To answer your question, I think that you probably would have to get someplace north of the 50% retracement, which is in that 555 area. And then we maybe start to see them come out.
And the higher corn weight on the feeders, but an impressive day to close those live cattle futures higher on Tuesday.
In a word, wow. Yeah, this is out of the norm. Typically, when we have that sharply higher corn, the feeders break, take the fats with it. It wasn't the case at all today. We got within striking distance here of contract highs on almost all the months. And I think cash is king. The way that cash market finished last Friday at 188 around here. Some talk of some cattle at 183 in the south where they had to pay some freight on, but still a different level for them. I think we just see a deal where the people keep selling into it, which would have been seasonally right, but certainly it doesn't seem like it's working for anybody, right? Discount, all of that. We've had huge fund selling here in the August cattle, and it still doesn't go down. All that roll that went on. Very, very impressive action on the live cattle for sure.
And probably will take out those contract highs as a result. Thanks for joining us, Brad Koima with Koima Varlick. That's Markets Now. More AgDay coming up.
Registration is open for the 2023 Pro Farmer Crop Tour, August 21st through the 24th. Attend one of our nightly meetings or join online as we gain insight on the 2023 growing season. Visit profarmercroptour.com/register to select the stop nearest you.
Let's go through our Friday, and we're going to be starting on Friday because once again, what I'm trying to do is find examples that really lays that pattern both from the surface and the upper part of the atmosphere to connect the two. We start to get those signals, and the strength of that pattern gives us an idea how long this is going to stick around. So I'm starting off Friday at 8 o'clock in the morning. You got a ridge of high pressure down here to the south. That's where we've been talking about the record high temperatures, not only to the south, but back out here to the west as well. Some slightly cooler air. I wouldn't necessarily say record cold air, but in between the two extremes is where we have the best chance of rain coming up for our Friday. Notice how that rain starts back here to the west and moves into the southeast. A weak low pressure system, that shallow trough that we talked about earlier in the show, that's showing up right here at the surface as low pressure system. More rain for the northeast, something they certainly do not need. I remember that was the same location that had consecutive flooding problems going back to last week. The other part of this is Saturday and into Sunday, we're going to shift gears with this pattern and go from a shallow trough to just a dominant ridge across 2/3 of the United States. That's why you see this big void through Texas, back all the way up here towards Canadian-United States border, starting Saturday, and then that is actually going to start to build out here towards the east by Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week. So again, that's kind of the long way of saying things are going to get quiet in regarding to rain chances and hot next Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. So again, there's a look at that flooding potential now going into our Saturday and Sunday. The jet stream overall tells that story. There's the ridge building there. Here's our shallow trough. There, in between the two, is where we have the best chance of rain coming up this weekend before that ridge really starts to take hold. Eureka! Now mostly cloudy, high around 98 degrees, low of 73 degrees. Greenville, not North Carolina, not South Carolina, but actually Kentucky. You got some morning thunderstorms. What about Frankfort? Michigan, mostly sunny.
A judge with a U.S. District Court for Massachusetts is extending the current stay on implementing the state's Question 3. Now, the 2016 ballot initiative bans the sale of pork from hogs born to sows housed in pens that don't comply with the state's standards. It was supposed to go into effect last week, but now has been extended until later next month. The National Pork Producers Council and several restaurant associations banded together to get the extension, saying it was needed with several issues about how to put the law into action remaining unclear. That includes allowing the transshipment of pork through the state so it can continue to reach other New England states. MPPC's chief legal strategist telling PorkBusiness.com that following the Supreme Court's decision regarding California's Proposition 12, Massachusetts was free to impose production standards on pork being sold in the state. Things are looking a little better profit-wise for pork producers. The latest Sterling Pork Profit Tracker putting farrow to finish hog producer profits at an average of $31 per head. Now that's up $14 from the previous week, but producers did see profits of $85 per head the same week a year ago. Pork packers closed the week averaging $5.50 per head in the black after finishing the previous week at break even. Last year, at the same time, packers were losing about $35 a head. Market watchers say right now feed costs are at their lowest since December of 2021. Farmer pest problems come in all shapes and sizes. Up next, a tiny pest working below ground is impacting yields across the country. We'll look at how one scientist in Louisiana is trying to fight back in the country. They're microscopic pests that can cause big yield losses. We're talking about nematodes. And as Craig Gautreaux reports, one scientist with the LSU Ag Center is working on solutions to this problem.
Come rain or shine or blistering heat, Tristan Watson is hard at work at finding answers to questions about nematodes. To see exactly what a nematode looks like, you would need a microscope, but farmers can see the damage they cause quite easily.
Reniform and the root knot nematode, they are feeding on the roots. They're reducing the roots' ability to access water and nutrients, so we get stunted plants. And a lot of times the symptoms look like nutrient deficiencies.
To farmers, the number of nematodes present can mean a big difference in their bottom line because higher numbers will lead to bigger yield losses.
Yield loss is going to depend on the site, obviously, and the level of infestation, but in severe root knot infestations, we can get up to 50% yield loss.
Watson has been tasked to develop tactics for reducing nematode pressure in soybean fields. He is looking at some lines developed out of Missouri.
These lines seem to not support any reniform nematode reproduction. The population's just plummeted.
These lines also out-yielded some varieties that are commonly grown in Louisiana. If Watson's research is validated, what's next?
Where I'd like this project to go next is commercialization. I hope that some of our commercial seed producers, developers, see the utility of these traits and the benefit that we can have for our growers and start incorporating that into the newer varieties that are coming out.
A survey of fields in Louisiana found that 20% had root knot nematodes and 60% had reniform nematodes. With the LSU Ag Center, this is Craig Gautreaux reporting.
All right, thanks, Craig. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Quentin Griffiths. Have a great day.